Welcome to the Selling Show, where we unpack, repack, and break down exactly how top experts sell their ideas, their value, and their services. This is your host, David Newman, and you are in the right place if you want better clients, bigger deals, and higher fees. Well, my friends, you are about to go on the ownership journey. That's right, the ownership journey. And I've got the amazing Bruce Werner with us. Bruce, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So tell us a little bit about your personal journey, all the amazing things that you've done, sort of your backstory, and what brought you to the work that you're doing today.
Sure. Thank you. So I grew up in a family business. You would know it as Werner Ladder. If you have a ladder in your garage with my name on it, that's us. Third generation family business. We owned the business for about 80 years. Interestingly, this is the 100th anniversary of the family business. We had a really good run. I learned great stuff. But one day there were two customers with 40% of revenue, and the business is an asset to protect the family. It's not a child. And we made the difficult and painful decision. We sold the business actually at the right time for the right reason. And we all pretty much get along, which is pretty unusual for family businesses. So that was probably the first half-ish of my life. And then I figured, hey, I'll just go get a regular job and, be another guy. And it didn't work out that way. I wound up starting 4 companies. 2 did really well, 2 not so much. But, if you bat 500 in baseball, that's pretty good. I was a partner in a private equity fund. And I, would be on and off gigs, as I would say. And one day, a friend who's an attorney said, I've got a client. He's got a really tough problem. I don't know what to tell him. Will you just talk to the guy so he thinks I'm helping him out? I said, sure. I got nothing to do. So I go talk to this guy, great business owner. And I listen to him and say, that's not very hard. I can solve that problem for you. He goes, really? And I go, yeah, will you pay me? He goes, all right. And so I printed up some business cards, and that's how I got into the consulting business. And so over time, what I have found out is my market are private companies between 10 and 100 million of revenue. A good part of them are family businesses, but not all. I focus on the business issues, not the, if we need a shrink, I'll bring in the shrink. I'm not a shrink. And most people who own a business know how to run their business. They know how to make money. They have ups and downs, and they're fine until there's something new they've never seen before. And when there's something new, it doesn't matter how good or how profitable they are. They're kind of like a deer in headlights. They don't have the skill, experience, judgment, and they say, hey, I need help. And so I'm an engineer by training. Engineers solve problems. I like interesting problems to solve. And so I found this little niche of helping private company owners solve the problems that keep them awake at night. And my goal is to solve interesting problems, spending time with people whose company I enjoy. And if I can do that, I'm a lucky man.
Wow. So much I want to pick up on from just that beginning piece of what you said. I love the clarity of 10 million to 100 million. That's the sweet spot. That's the target. When we wake up in the morning, that's who we're talking to. That's who we're writing for. That's who we're speaking with. Tell me a little bit, because I know people have FOMO, especially salespeople.
I'll make it really simple.
Yeah, tell us how you zero in on that and don't have the FOMO.
Well, it did take a while for that clarity to come to me, and I made all the rookie mistakes that a not good marketing person would make, so I wouldn't want to overstate my skill set. But what really happens is, as I got to know the market better, over 100 million of revenue, there's a different set of competitors, larger organizations with big marketing budgets. I was competing against some big 4 people on some stuff and said hey, wait a minute, that makes no sense. And then below 10 million, I did a lot of work, but the problem is you either can't get paid or they're not mature enough to execute. So part of my criteria for taking on work is you got to be committed, because the work I'm doing is transformational. If you want help improving sales by 5%, I'm happy to refer you out. When I walk in, I'm going to say, how do we double your revenue in 3 years? How do we change lives? Which is really what business is a way to improve lives. Just making money is necessary, but it's not the reason we're on this rock. So the below 10 million, selectively, I'll work with them, but it's just too hard for it to be productive, a good experience, and frankly, not waste your time, because all I have to sell is time.
Such a great point. Those two criteria, we can almost draw an axis, Bruce, right? About impact on them and fun for you. And you're after maximum fun for you, maximum impact for them. So I want to also go back to one thing that you said that's critically important with Werner Ladder. You said two big giant clients accounted for 40% of the revenue.
So, the 40% may not be exactly right. It's a little fuzzy, but
big percentage.
We used to have 100 or 150 customers and a broadly diversified customer base and a broadly diversified set of competitors. But like many industries, the industry massively consolidates. So you think about the home improvement business in the 90s, it was the decade of the big box. There was no Home Depot in the 70s and 80s.
Right.
We didn't sell to Home Depot until I think 1994. We purposely avoided all the big box guys because we thought they would kill our traditional customer base. That's an old story. And in 94, the number 4 competitor went broke and we bought assets. So we bought his equipment and his customer list and some other things. And that was the first time we started selling to Depot. And our business just took off like a rocket. We went from 180 million revenue when I joined in 89, a little before that, to 500 million when I left in 2000. And we just couldn't make ladders fast enough. So not confusing luck with skill. That was a golden moment in the industry. And certainly in hindsight, we can say our timing to exit was pretty spot on because a couple of years later, the rate of growth dramatically slowed. The industry had consolidated and the go-go days were over.
Yeah, how about that? I'm also curious, before we move on to the ownership journey and your fantastic book, I want to ask about the different modes and the different thought processes in all of these different sales channels. So obviously we're doing, a manufacturer selling to a distributor, selling to a wholesaler, selling to a retailer. You're in the real estate business, you're in the hedge fund business, you're in the consulting business. All of those are different sales challenges and different sales obstacles. Tell us a little bit about how you approach sales differently in each of those different 2 or 3 modes.
Sure. So I start with industry. So when I say I focus between 10 and 100 million of revenue, one of the assumptions is it doesn't matter what industry you're in at that size of business. There's only 5 or 6 problems that matter. They're dressed up differently. I can learn your industry pretty quick and easy. And as I now have done it dozens of times, I don't need to be an expert in the industry. If we need an expert, we'll go hire a consultant. I need to be an expert in the 5 or 6 problems that you're hiring me for. I will quickly understand what you go to market, how are your sales channels organized, how do you sell. That's a half-hour conversation. I don't know that any industry is so different and unique that no one's heard of it before. And so I work in service, I work in product, pretty easy to figure out. And so because I'm not in the business of generating revenue, I'm in the business of transforming the company. So it always starts with, what do you want to do with the business as an owner? Therefore, what business strategy do we need to get you there? Therefore, what capital and talent do you need to execute? And sales is a component of that. So it's part of the menu, but it's not the only thing on the menu.
Hey, if you're loving this episode as much as I am, pop over to doitmarketing.com/manifesto and get your free 37-page download guide to how to sell smarter, sell more easily, sell more often. That's what we're here to help you with at The Selling Show. Off you go. What it sounds like, Bruce, is that your philosophy, and you mentioned this in a different way a few moments ago, the business is not a venue for generating money. The business is a venue for creating transformation, and that transformation, serving more people, helping more people, broadening the impact of what your company is designed to do. That's what generates the money, but you're really in the impact business and the transformation business.
Yeah, and I want to be careful. Business is a means to generate money because people need money to eat and live. I don't want to be disrespectful of that. And the vast majority of people struggle to put food on the table. So I'm empathetic of that and mindful. When I work with clients, I ask them to elevate their thinking, think more broadly. There's more to it than just making money. And for successful business, if a business is struggling, it's a different conversation. I do turnaround and workout. That's very different. But for businesses that are more in growth mode, and where the business is basically healthy, people who own a business for a long time go through stages where they get bored. There's nothing new, or their interests in life change, or something at home changes, and their relationship to the business isn't what it was when they were 25. And that's just part of the circle of life, Hakuna Matata, whatever. And so I strongly counsel people, you own your business, you've owned it for 20 years, you're not going anywhere. Think about how you want to live your life. The business is a means to improve your life. Once you've demonstrated the competence to run a successful business, your table stakes is you got to have a reasonable, healthy business. Then we can go do great stuff. If your business isn't healthy, well, let's go get it healthy first. So it always starts where, as I say, where are you today? That's point A. Let's understand that. And then let's have the fun conversation about point B. Where do you want to go to? A lot of people can't answer that question because it's hard. And so once I know A and B, I can build a road from A to B and take you there.
Man, so much to talk about here. There are businesses, I'm sure you've worked with some of these. They say, Bruce, we got a good business. We got a stable business. We're a $25 million company. But the problem is we've been a $25 million company for the last 7 years. And we've hit our ceiling of complexity. We don't know where else to go. We don't know what else to do. We're in a stable business. Our clients love us. People repeat, they refer, they recommend. We can't get past 25 million. What's the puzzle piece that we're missing? What kinds of things would you start to dig into for a business that's plateaued like that?
I actually have several of those I'm working on now. And I will say it's not unique to people. There's a fair amount of signs that when business hit 10 and then 25 to 30 and then typically 50 to 75, the nature of the organization changes, the challenges changes, and they literally hit a wall and they need to make changes to step up as a step function to go to the next level. Happens all the time. Usually people start talking about forming a board of directors at 25 to 30. When someone calls me and said, I'm thinking about a board, and I'll say 25 to 30 million revenue, they go, yeah. But when they're kind of stuck there, I always like to start with the basics. How do you define success? Growing just to grow is the wrong answer. Where are you trying to get to? I need to get the business to a certain valuation so when I retire, I can live the life I want. Great. It's a good answer. So start with where you want to go. Let's talk about the strengths. It's going to be about the management team and capital. For privately owned companies, sometimes the needs of the business are beyond some of the management team or ownership. A delicate discussion, but one that can be had and say, well, maybe we need to change a few things because if we keep doing the same things, that doesn't work. But maybe we need to bring in some talent. Maybe we need to bring in some consultants with some expertise where you don't really have it, like a rock star marketing or sales guy. And maybe you're not the head sales guy anymore. It's okay. Maybe your technology is old. Maybe your supply chain is really out of whack. Let's just look at the constituent parts to find out what's the constraint preventing you from growing. And, one by one, you dissect, you have interaction, you talk to the rest of the leadership team and kind of say, do we have the right people on the bus? Is the bus going the right place? Maybe a couple of people need to get off the bus. It's a pretty straightforward process. The important part is getting the ownership to engage in the process. You kind of got to be all in or don't get started.
Yes. What's coming to my mind is about the people changes that, it's the old Marshall Goldsmith, what got you here won't get you there. But sometimes that doesn't mean let's fire everybody and bring in a whole new crew. I love what you said about, you know what? It might be an advisor. It might be a consultant. It might be outsourcing. It might be delegating differently. It might be reshuffling who does what. So even like you said, the CEO, the founder, the owner, if they're the salesperson in chief, you're bringing an awesome, amazing VP of sales who's worked at $100 million company. They know how to get the $25 million company to $100 million, but it's not with that CEO and owner in charge of sales. It's with that new VP of sales in charge of sales. And you're right, it probably is a very delicate conversation. So let's zoom out and talk about your book, The Ownership Journey. And I'm imagining the ownership journey starts when you have some crazy harebrained idea. I want to start a company. And what are some of the foundational things, Bruce, that when in your speaking audiences, with your consulting work, I'm sure you have a lot of very successful people in one area of life, and they go, Bruce, I want to start a company. What do you think about this idea or this concept and so forth? So walk us through the whole ownership journey, what you write about in the book, and then let's start at the very beginning and some advice for the beginners.
Yeah, so thank you for that. One key thing in the preface that I think is important is the journey is about the life cycle of ownership. I obviously don't know where the readers are in their own circumstance. If you read the whole book and 10% of it has an impact, then the book's a success. And so that's kind of my philosophy. So I mentioned a few minutes ago, it starts with ownership goals, also called what do I want to be when I grow up? And that's regardless of your age in life. But I think if you don't know what you're trying to do with your life, the rest of it doesn't come together well. But if you say, here's the things I want to do. I know people who say, I just want to get to a number and retire. I have a client who says, I want to start 3 businesses over $300 million, all kinds of stuff. I have a client who says, I want to be the CEO of a public company. Let's get there. Great. Without that kind of North Star, everything is a lot harder. But once we have that North Star, it's exactly, okay, so what does the business have to do to get you there? That's very mechanical. There's some numbers, there's some descriptors. You got to talk about, geographically, where are we? What about people? You build a traditional business strategy. And for my client base, 10 to 100 million, it's not an 80-page PowerPoint. It's 2 to 3 pages of bullet points. Anything more than that isn't going to work. And so there are people who want and need the big PowerPoint. That's great. I'm happy to refer you out. But I want to give you a 2 or 3 page document that's actually going to make a difference. So I'll help you figure that out. And it's a living document. And then from there, it's 2 easy questions. Do you need money? If you do, let's go get it. I'll help you raise the capital. Do that all the time. Do you need talent? Let's go figure out a talent strategy. Because without that, nothing happens. Once all that's in place, there's a couple other issues of, one is just sticking to it with execution. It's hard. It's tiring. You fail a couple of times. So that discipline is super important. Sometimes there's some M&A along the way. You want to buy a competitor. Most private company owners never buy or sell a company until they sell their own. And they really don't know what the hell they're doing. And so I help both on the buy side, and I certainly help on the sell side. I usually wind up helping clients sell 1 or 2 businesses a year. I'm not an investment bank, but I'm the guy who hires them. There's usually some conflict. My brother and I are always fighting. Dad doesn't listen to me. My partner and I have fallen out. Let's do some conflict resolution. As your business gets more successful, you need to grow your team. You need senior level talent. And you need to think about management succession. Not selling the business, but like, hey, if Susie gets hit by a bus, who's going to run sales? So you need to kind of build up. That's a critical function. Certainly, governance is an issue. Do I need a board of advisors? Do I need a board of directors? How big? How formal? And governance is like a bespoke suit. It should be designed just to fit you. And it doesn't matter what other people are doing or how formal or how fancy their board meetings are. This is about helping you get to your goal. So we need to put in a governance piece. And then as you move towards the end, at some point, you either die or retire. You get to pick one, not the other. So if you're thinking about selling your business, let's talk about the sale process. In fact, it's probably the biggest thing in your life. let's not screw it up. That may take years to get ready for. And there's a chapter in the book on family business because they're always a little different. And the last chapter is the one that's actually the most important for private company owners. You spend your whole life working and you figure one day I'm going to sell the business. I'm going to move to Florida and play golf every day and everything will be wonderful. And it usually doesn't work out that way. In fact, too many people work their whole lives, sell the business, get a pile of money, and are absolutely miserable because they identify themselves as their job or their business. And when that's gone, they either don't know who they are or they don't have authority. They have no one to boss around, and they're just a little bit lost. And at that point in life, it's tough to pick up hobbies. It's tough to make new friends. And to me, that's the worst crime at all. So I talk about how do you win the game of life? How do you have no regrets after you sell your business and you ride off into the sunset? That's the most important piece. Don't work for 40 years to be unhappy. It makes no sense. So planning your exit process and getting ready for life after the deal, that takes a couple of years. It's actually really hard and way harder than running your business, is what most people say. So the book ends on that because, people should enjoy life. You work hard, you try to do the right thing. Let's make sure that last step is as good as it could be.
Yes. I want to go back to the beginning of the book. And you've mentioned this a couple of times just in our conversation here in the last couple of minutes. It's the word strategy. You'd think, okay, I got a $10 million company, or even I've got a $2 million company. I want to get to 10. I want to get to 25. I want to get to 100, whatever it is. We assume, probably wrongly, that they must have a strategy. But I think a lot of owners, they're in the day-to-day weeds and they don't zoom out to a planetary level and say, why are we here? What are we doing? What is our purpose? What is our end game? What is our end goal? Talk a little bit about this whole strategic foundation and maybe some critical questions that business owners and salespeople who are the CEO, obviously, and the salesperson in chief, what strategic questions should they ask themselves much sooner than they think they should? So they're like, oh, that doesn't apply to me. It's like, actually, it does. It applies to you right now if you want to get to that next quantum leap. What are some strategic questions that you like to ask?
There's 2 or 3 things that are the same for every business, more so with smaller private companies, which have less resources and less senior level talent. The real question is, what is your competitive advantage? What do you do better than somebody else? If you don't know what that is and hone that every day, you're going to go out of business. And it could be as simple as we're always the lowest cost because we know how to make it cheaper, or we give better service than other people and people love us, or we're in all the locations you want. It's not rocket science. As I like to say for companies in this space, if you can't explain it to your mother and have her understand it, it's too complicated. Keep it really simple. You need a strategic competitive long-term advantage. You need to have the talent, and you need to be really focused on that. And so in smaller businesses, if you're entrepreneurial, don't try to do too many things. You got to have enough focus because you don't have the resources to go do too many things.
2 questions pop to my mind, but both of which I'm sure are huge puzzles to your clients and to your audiences. First one, Bruce, is about hiring. So you've mentioned the word talent. Let's get some talent. What's your talent strategy? Who do we need to hire? Who do we need to bring on board? Hiring is a huge mystery to some of these folks. And even when it's not a mystery to them, the common pitfall, the big blind spot, is we hire people that we like, or we hire people who are just like us, because we tend to like people who are like us. How do you install some hiring discipline in the companies that you work with?
Well, you have to start by designing the need. What are the skills and experiences we have to have for this person to be successful? And certainly if you're a growing business, I like to talk about you're not hiring for today. By the time the person gets on board, gets up to speed, gets impactful, it's a year from now. So I talk about, let's design, if you're at, let me pick a number. If you're at $25 million when we get to 50. Let's just do a whiteboard exercise. What's your org chart going to look like at 50 million? The box is not the name. What are the skills and experiences you need in those boxes? Then let's look backwards to today. Who is it going to take time to develop? Do you have the people inside that you can develop? Do you really have to go outside? Do you need skills and experiences that there's no way we have it inside? We just have to go outside. Oh, we need to go to get a guy who worked at 100 million or a gal who worked at 100 million to come work with us at 25 to get us there and incent them. So you really got to look a couple years ahead for senior level talent. Certainly at a more operational level, more tactical, it's a different type of needs to fill. But I'm talking about, top couple levels. And you certainly should not hire people like you, but you need to hire people who are a cultural fit. They can have a different personality, but they need to have the same values and behaviors consistent with your organization. And there's no magic way of doing that, but I always like to talk about the airplane test. If you think about flying from New York to LA, if you don't want this person next to you on that flight, don't hire them.
Yeah, very, very important. I love the org chart of the future. That is a very powerful tool. It's a very powerful frame to really evaluate where you want to be and what that will look like from a people strategy. Wait. We're not just going to listen to this episode. There are downloads, there are resources, there are links, there are bonuses waiting for you on this episode's page when you go over to doitmarketing.com/podcast. That's right, doitmarketing.com/podcast. Grab the notes right under this episode. See you over there. Next question. And this word is probably the sexiest word in entrepreneurship. It's the word scaling. Everybody wants to scale. We're going to scale the business. And so I also want to ask you about scaling versus focus, because I'm guessing it's hard to stay focused when you want to scale, because people think scaling is about new offers and new programs and new products and new channels and new everything. And we're going to scale. We're going to triple this thing in 3 years. Talk about what scaling really is, street level, ground level, and some common mistakes that owners make when they're thinking about scaling.
Sure. And I'll give an example. Think about companies that have really scaled massively. How many products do they have? What markets are they in? What do they do differently across their global colossus enterprise? My observation is when you are more focused, you're more able to scale as long as the market's big enough. So if we're selling chocolate ice cream, but we now sell it in 10 cities instead of one city, that's scaling. You need to do, great businesses tend to do one or two things really well. And that's why the market loves them. Once you get large enough, like Amazon, you can start doing other things because you have all the infrastructure to add products and services through an existing distribution channel. But the secret for any business is you need distribution to get your product or service out there. So I think certainly for private companies, do one or two things really, really well, so well that the whole market knows you're the guy for that, and the market will reward you. The lack of focus, trying to have too many products, being too cute, doing too many ways, it's hard to do it well.
Yes, it absolutely is. I want to take a little bit of a detour into your personal business, because I know one of the things that you're involved in is a director training program.
Sure.
So helping people, get trained up and win seats on boards of directors. Who is that a good fit for? Who is that not a good fit for? Because you hear, a lot of these big successful CEOs, they say, well, I'm on the board of 3 companies and I'm on the board of directors of such and such. And they make a big deal of it. What's in it for us to think about at some point in the future, possibly wanting to be on a board of directors of a company? And then tell us a little bit about this director training program that you're in charge of.
Sure. So a little background to have it make sense. The world of public company boards and private companies are very different. My comments apply to private companies. If you're interested in public companies, you already know, and these comments don't apply to you. In the private company world, the number one rule is don't do it for the money. You should be respected and compensated for your time. But if you're thinking of it as a primary form of income, that tends to turn out poorly. People are attracted to it because it's an ability to have an impact on other companies, which can be rewarding. And if you're later in your career thinking about slowing down, retiring, but don't want to completely check out, it's a great way to stay engaged without a 60-hour-a-week grind. It is a great way to expand your mind and see things that in your regular life you can't. So it should enhance the quality of your life at typically, in the second half, because in the first half, you probably don't have the qualifications. So those are the reasons to do it. And I'm really cautious about some people, if you're getting into it for the wrong reasons, it's not good. And the other thing I found, I've sat on dozens of boards, one of the great benefits is the people I have met. I've worked with colleagues at a board where we became friendly. We termed off, we left the board. We're still close friends and go out to dinner because they're just such great people. And that makes life better, having good company along the ride. So two-part response to the training question. So there's an organization called the Private Directors Association. It's the national trade association for people involved in private company boards and governance. There's about 20 chapters around the country, a couple thousand people. I think it's $300 or $400 a year to join. It's about 6 or 7 years old. For about 5 years, I was in charge of running all the training programs on behalf of that organization. I ran about 200 people through the program, where we help you get the written materials, your biography, your CV, all that stuff to be presentable for board work, which is different from professional work. And then there's a bunch of case studies and classwork to kind of get you ready to go compete for your first seat. So I ran that for about 5 years and finished out about a year and a half ago. The organization is still there. They've upgraded the program. They've put more resources into it. If you have an interest, Private Directors Association, I think it's privatedirectorsassociation.org is probably the website, pretty easy to find. Go check that out, see if it makes sense for you. In my practice, what I do for my clients is I form boards of directors for them, which is a whole process. If we need to do some training, I'll do that as part of that assignment. There is a cottage industry of people who will, for a not so small fee, say they'll train you to be a director and go get your first seat. And I would just say caveat emptor. The governance industry is like every other industry. People are there to make profit, and that's fine. But it's a nuanced and interesting market.
Yes, that's probably the best way to leave that. It's a nuanced and interesting market. Okay. I just wanted to ask about that because that's sort of a, kind of black box, ivory tower, secret kind of thing that you're really good at kind of democratizing and explaining to people about the pros and cons and how all of that works. Well, Bruce, this has been so fascinating. Thank you, thank you, thank you. The book is Your Ownership Journey. Where can we send people? What gifts do we have? What resources do we have? How can people get connected and stay connected to more Bruce Werner brilliance?
Thank you. Thank you. So the website for the book is brucewerner.com, and Werner is Werner. It's available on Amazon, Apple, Barnes & Noble, hardback, softback, Kindle. The audio book will be out in about a couple weeks. My website for my business is konaadvisors.com, Kona, Kona like Hawaii. On both websites, there is a large amount of content, videos, articles I've written. There's a free sample chapter of the book on the website, brucewerner.com. You can find content on my LinkedIn profile, Bruce Werner. I also write a monthly column on Forbes.com and financialpoise.com. Go to those websites, type in my name. You get more than you want.
Excellent. And all of those links, all those resources are directly under this episode at thesellingshow.com. Bruce Werner, thank you for being with us. Such brilliance, and cannot wait to dig into all the great ideas, all the meat, all the wonderfulness in the book, and appreciate your genius. Thank you, my friend.
Thanks. Be safe, everybody.
wraps up another episode of The Selling Show. Hey, tell you what, if you like us, rate us and review us on Apple Podcasts, subscribe, tell a friend, go grab the notes and downloads and extras at thesellingshow.com. See you next time.